was a legitimate and legal right. What this means is that an individual or people or persons, their right to privacy could be violated. We heard about people violating these rights to privacy through tapping phones illegally. Once upon a time, you needed a search warrant for people to go into your home. In fact, the great scandal with Richard Nixon was because he is violating the privacy of certain citizens, monitoring them. Today, that's par for the course. Snowden was able to identify that the CIA and FBI had technology that monitors every single person's lives and phones and different networks. Now, today, your cell phone, whether you think it's on or not, records and lists everything you do, every step you take. Even when you think the phone is off, it's on. Your right to privacy has been taken. Today, people can tap into your phone, into your life, and therefore they can do this in what was in other eras something that was illegal. They can do it frequently and often as they want to today. This is the age we live in. Now, I'm not speaking about this because times have changed. It's harder to hide in the darkness. It's harder to hide outside of the light. Now you have to pick what side you're on. It's hard to run below the radar and not be seen. Both the unpleasant things and the pleasant things of your life are now on display. And it doesn't have to be on the internet either. There's technology now to look into your homes from abroad, locate you through products, violate all human rights. I'm going to challenge something it's a dangerous language. It's dangerous speak when we must speak about it. It's a scary thought, but we must entertain it. What if the existence we have, the democracy that we have, for most of us in the world, is actually just an illusion to use as battery cells to fuel the higher ups? That we are actually servants to the people who actually are in a position where they can exploit us for greater gain and power and manipulate us as they see fit. You think about the people who have been assassinated and killed for their stance on certain things, whether it was Martin Luther, whether it was Malcolm X, whether it was always a dangerous change. And I'm not saying that change in and of itself is good all the time, but definitely there is a change to try to contain and control the people who are the elements of change. I've seen it with myself on the internet. I've seen how certain people have tried to muzzle me and muffle me. And I've even seen systems, YouTube and all these other support platforms, simply start to disrupt the signals that I send, the transmissions that I send. So I've seen how on a smaller level, people who challenge a system is suddenly censored and quieted. So, what does this mean? Who do we trust? I'll say it again. The power you have is in each other. It's not in the higher ups. Don't put your confidence and trust in them. A lot of you are going through a season of difficulty. Just my beard. A lot of you are going through a season of difficulty, not understanding that you have everything you need to get through that season if you network with each other. And that's the key to you doing well. You're not dependent on the central government to exist. You're not dependent on their handouts. You don't need to be. You have the power within yourself to run your affairs and take care of yourselves because of diversity of labor and work. Take, for instance, let me show you an example of how you could sustain your own self and your community if you work together. A lot of your communities have a restaurant business. That restaurant business is built on doing meals and stuff in your community. Now, here's how you support the restaurant business. Okay, so you can't go and attend and go inside the restaurants. The restaurants, for the moment, will do special takeouts. They will modify their systems to take out food to the respective homes. So, how this works out is instead of now people coming to the restaurant, why not have individualized restaurant service at your home? That'd be an interesting setup where they come in, they set the setting with disposable stuff, and they serve you food in that setting, everything being hot and ready. So that is another way for restaurant services to do it. It costs a little bit more expense because now you have to transport the food. But in the end, it is another possibility in how they can manage getting things to people. Now, it will not be as fresh as if you were in the restaurant sitting down, the food being prepared for you, and then it's delivered on your plate. But it is a small adjustment that can be done by the service. Now, how does it work so that costs are minimized? They work along with the transportation service of your community. By both agreeing, both can be employed. The transportation service guaranteed to transport the goods and services from the restaurant business. They work in tandem to cut costs. As a result, the food gets to the customer. So this is a way to make a slight adjustment for an economy that is not working so the restaurant services can stay up. The adjustment now are going to be one in which is a takeout service. This is what's happening with also things like businesses like KFC, etc. Will there be an added cost for transport? No, because if the transport service cuts a deal with the restaurant service, you can still get the same quality stuff at the same price. And now the customer doesn't take the brunt of the burden. It's simply an agreement between the transport service and the restaurant service, the customer understanding the venue now will be on delivery to their homes. In fact, because there's no ambience and because the ambience is not a home, and because it's basically delivery, once the stuff is delivered, the client can choose to have the restaurant service set it up in their home, or they can just choose to take the service and they set it up themselves, and that cuts the cost. So I'm just saying this is the way how an adjustment can be made for the situation to keep businesses alive. But that calls for coordination between the businesses in the community that are there and with the people in the community and an understanding between both. So you, as people, can run your own communities and coordinate with one another in a very successful way if you choose to follow along a certain line where you're going to sustain yourself and work with each other. It calls for cooperation. Just as how you cooperate in a crisis is the way how you should cooperate now. Each man for himself will not work in this situation. People need to couple together. So I say all of this to say that in the world today, there's a lot of good and evil that's going on. And the fact that we still have a caste system, a sort of multi-tier system, and some of it's not based on the merits of work, and there is no give back. Because I was watching a documentary breaking down what philanthropy really can be about. And philanthropy is interesting. It's on the onus of the philanthropists to donate money back to the society, having been successful at working to amass that money from society. See, what these businesses do not understand, without your customer base, without the clientele, not make the money you're making. You are dependent in some way, directly or indirectly, on the people to buy into your product, to purchase your stuff. If the consumers, which is the people, are poor and can't afford the service that you are offering or product, then your business is going to go bankrupt. And that's speaking on a global scale. So, in order for capitalism and in order for business to prosper, it is imperative that the people of any given country or any given district also have wealth. So that's a tricky situation. Now, what manipulators are trying to do is wire us, influence us, trick us into thinking that no, we are not the ones with power. We must do what they say. Take, for example, some countries are trying to do what is called mandatory vaccination. You must be vaccinated. In doing so, the vaccines they have purchased from the companies that sell them guarantee that their product has a market. But you are the consumer of that product. If you do not take a vaccination, then guess what? The government has a lot of product on their hands. And while they did a transaction with the companies, they probably won't do another transaction with the companies because they will have extra product on their hand. You, the consumer of the product, the one that actually uses the product, you dictate everything in the world. Don't let them fool you. I don't care how powerful they think they are. I don't care if it's governments. You determine ultimately what happens next. Now, they have been able to manipulate you and trick you into thinking you don't have that power and that you must go along with whatever is said. And also, you've been tricked and duped into this caste system as if you, which is at the bottom of the caste system, the average Joe, the average person, the middle class, the lower class person, that you actually didn't work hard to achieve what happened. You know, a lot of Republicans speak about how these people, they worked hard to amass their wealth. What they seem to always continuously forget that wealth would never be if it wasn't for the middle class and the lower class people who were contributing to that wealth by being the consumers of your business. Take, for instance, the insurance business.
Of course, you worked hard to get your sale and you earned your whatever piece of that sale that you did, the percentage of the sale. But you wouldn't have a sale if you didn't have a client. If that client hadn't purchased your product, you wouldn't have a sale. Now, some insurers, they go to wealthy people to be insured, which just makes sense. But once again, indirectly, those wealthy people made their money off of the average people and their confidence in some product, which either they invested in or some product that they're actually or service that they're giving. So, no matter how you look at it, wealth is built on the backs of the masses. The masses are the ones making it possible for this wealth to be generated. Whether you had the foresight and the intellect and the direction, the guidance to be able to put together a system so that you can generate wealth, doesn't mean that it was independent of all the people who contributed to that wealth. And that is where big business, as well as people who are in high levels, who try to call shots and don't want to be taxed and they want to do their philanthropy, that's where the people at those high levels fail to understand. It is not a matter of whether you want to give back to society. It is a law that you have to give back to society based on the things. You have to do that interchange because it was a transaction that allowed you to be in the position you are, and therefore you owe, in sort of a yin yang theory, a transaction back. Now that you're comfortable, you need to take the majority of your percentage of earnings and wealth and fuel it back into the system. Not just the system, but into people on the ground. That is why seeing this travesty of justice where we can't even get you can't even see a stimulus to the people, the masses, particularly the masses and people. We could forget about business for a minute because people make a business. All right, business is still not automated as far as I do know. I don't think there are bots that run businesses. I do not think that businesses are fully automated. So people run businesses, and people in the businesses help to generate that business and income and make it viable. So at the end of the day, the first thing and the first set of people that money should go to, the first give back should be to the people, not to the businesses, to the people. Because guess what? The businesses will survive if the people have the money. Once you have consumers, your business can work. Without consumers, your business can't work. And so businesses depend on the demand for the product. And then they can work the supply demand chain. And that supply demand chain will never happen if there are no consumers. So the more you destroy your potential market and the more you destroy your potential consumers by them passing away or dying or whatever, or going into hardship where they are economically not viable anymore. Now you've had a problem where you had potential consumers and now they are a burden on the system because now the system has to find ways to sustain these people. What Congress should have been doing was get rid of the first and fundamental problem that's always going to be a problem. Congress and the Senate should have been working on relief for people who have bills and so on to relieve the debt of that. They should have wiped that clean first. Because when you have healthy consumers in a market, it drives market forces. And consumers are always going to consume. Because when these consumers pay their debts to the businesses to which they owe, those businesses catch up as well. So by giving money to the consumer, the consumer is going to do what the consumer always does. It's going to consume. And when the consumer consumes, that is to say, they pay off their debts and then they continue to consume, that drives the economy, the local economy, not the federal economy. It drives the economy. Now, with a strong economy, now we get back to jobs because now the employers can employ people again. And so that boosts jobs. And not only does it boost jobs, but it also boosts the entrepreneurs. Particularly, the more important thing is the small businesses. But the small businesses are not driven by tremendous capital. A lot of that capital is driven by people investing in their own companies. And so when you give a stimulus, you're actually stimulating the small businesses as well. Instead of a top-down approach, you need to start with a down-top approach, particularly for the middle class and the lower class citizens, because that's where the majority of people are. The tremendous conglomerates, the multinationals, these companies employ millions upon millions of middle class to lower class people in different strata, specialized in different areas. So you have to understand, whenever you boost the majority of a population or populace, once you get that injection of life into it, obviously the economy is going to do a lot better. And it's going to be felt all around. But like I said before, if you really want to get the economy working really properly, it is best to have the average individual have, even if it's a tiny bit of stock, get them stuck in companies that fit their interest. That way, if there is an economical hit and you decide to inject life into particularly Wall Street, these individuals will benefit from the injection into Wall Street. So you get a multiplication effect across your country, and it buffers the injury and damage because these people have investments. When you have your country, the entire country is investing in things, even if the investment is a very small investment, it can reap big dividends to the majority of people in a country. And that is where a lot of foresight by governance has fallen short. If they had had that foresight 2 to 5 years before this happened, not only would they have had the Federal Reserve stocked up with money, but we would have had people on Wall Street and people, the majority of the population on Wall Street and etc., having a surplus of money such that they can deal with this situation. I would never have needed, in the first place, the government to step in and intervene. The country could have run as it was. The other thing that is very important to understand again is that communities can operate independent of the federal government. Everything within your localized community is there for you to at least be in sustenance. And to some degree, some of you to actually do extremely well in the dry period. I think of the biblical account where Joseph had stored up stores of grain for 7 years. So when there were 7 years of famine, the whole entire world from different parts of the world came to Egypt. And that's how it should be in a first world nation, which is going through an economical crisis. The whole world should be able to go to that nation to get grain, to get corn, to follow the principles that they have set, so that when a disaster happens worldwide, the people, no matter what is the setting, have something to fall back on. Because globally, people have something to fall back on. The poor, the needy, everybody fall back on, which is very probable, because that would just cause for a slight it would have been called for a redistribution of wealth, actually, because the model that I'm speaking of is one in which wealth is constantly discovered in precious minerals and precious resources. And then solar power is going to cause a whole new paradigm shift in how we deal with things. And the technologies, investing in technologies that have to do with solar power, wind, electricity, etc. These things of the future. And this is what people should be investing in. But it would be cool if the government in the relief package was to give some stock in that to the entire of the United States of America as relief. See, stock is more important than money. And that stock can be, if you need to leverage it, you can take a small amount of that stock, a small portion of it, and leverage with a lot of things. You can do a lot of leveraging. And so that means when you have, like, for instance, my country's, it's going through a recession, but it's not as hard hit as anywhere else in the world. We're doing quite well. Other countries like Qatar and so on, they don't have recession, period. But the reason that happens is because as much as the people at the top still make ridiculous mint, right? People at the bottom also, their standard of living is so high that they don't care. Like, they have enough to take care of themselves, so they're not worried. The point behind it is you can still have a caste system, but why is it that the caste system has to be such that the middle class, the lower class people are suffering while the wealthy is doing well? There's something wrong with that system. Now, however, if the system is such that the middle class, the lower class people are doing fine, they're doing great, and the wealthy is still doing great too, then in that case, it's a good system. And if you want to desire to be super duper wealthy, you can do so. If you want to be in the middle class, you can do so. And what people call the poor class is actually, their standards is like if they were the middle class. In that respect, everyone's doing well, and that's what you want. You don't want people suffering while other people are doing extremely well. There's something wrong with that system. I don't care how much philanthropy these people talk out of their mouth. There's something wrong with that system. People should not be suffering and other people doing well in a country which has all the resources and all the technology and all the insight to have everybody doing well. So this is where there is a problem, and it's a systemic problem, which should be sorted out. I know countries where everybody's doing well because, again, it's how the country is managed, how it is run, makes a big difference. I can tell you, I live in a black country where most people are black in my country. There's no real white people in my country. And a lot of people do very, very well for themselves. Very, very well for themselves. So I just wanted to share that because I see that, there's a systemic thing going through countries and places of the world. I just want to set the record straight on that. What you need in the building. Hope you guys have a good one. Peace.